Hi there, David here, and today I want to talk to you about the sound design cycle. I want to take a macro approach to sound design, basically like a 20-foot bird's eye view of what the process looks like. So what are the 3 steps that I use whenever I'm creating pretty much any kind of sound effect? So for most of you seasoned sound designers, you're probably already doing this cycle that I'm going to discuss here in this video, whether subconsciously or not. But for those who may be new to sound design and creating sound effects, my hope is that this will give you a system or a systemized way of looking at things so that it can just help you be more effective and productive and also just creative in your sound design. All right, before we jump into the actual 3 elements here, I want to share with you my sound design starter pack. This is a sound pack I put together of over 900 sound effects. There's a whole bunch of stuff like monster sounds, spell sounds, whooshes, UI sounds, ambiences, and it's absolutely free. I want to give it to you as a gift. So if you haven't picked that up, check the links in the description below, and you can use that in your commercial or personal projects. So check that out. All right, so the first step of the sound design cycle that I like to call it is research and development. This is also like the planning stage. This is basically everything that you do away from your computer, away from your recorder, away from anything technical or creative. So here we're just thinking about and planning everything that we're going to need to do to create our sound effects. So this can be everything from what is the sound profile going to be like? What elements are we going to want to use in our sounds? This can be anything from like, well, we want it to be very digital sounding, or maybe you want it to be very organic. You only want recorded material. Maybe you don't want anything synthesized, right? So this is the phase where you kind of choose which direction you want to go into. All right, so some other questions that you might want to use or ask yourself in this phase is, what kind of recordings are you going to want to use for your sound design? What plugins are you going to want to use? Sometimes you might want to use like a very specific plugins for every sound effect that's going to be kind of characterizing all of your sounds together. Also, it could be like, how do you want to assemble your sounds together? That can be another thing that you want to take into consideration here. So let's take an actual real example here. So let's say we want to create some sort of magic spell sound effects, and our game, we have a bunch of characters and they're each going to have different spell sounds. Well, for these spell sounds in this planning stage, this is where we can decide, well, each spell we want to have for like the good spells, let's say, or positive spells, we want to have some sort of bell sounds for each of them. The bell sound's going to indicate to the player, it's going to be that psychological trigger that's going to associate it with a positive or a good like spell sound. All right, so we know we're going to need some bell sounds. Now, do these bell sounds, do we want them to be all digitalized? We can create bell sounds inside of synths, or do we want everything to be recorded? Maybe we just want to have recorded bell sounds, and we can go and record various different kinds of bell sounds for the different characters, let's say. So this is all stuff that you can think about and plan in this planning stage that's going to characterize your spell sounds for your game, for the characters for the game, right? So yeah, this is the place and the step where you would do all of this planning. All right, step number 2 is the design stage. So this is where you actually go and start designing your sound effects. So for this stage, I actually like to split it up into 2 parts. The first part is the creative section. In the creative step, this is the step where you want to have the absolute freedom to experiment and come up with a whole bunch of wacky sounds and things that you might not have thought of even during your planning stage, perhaps. So even if, let's say in your planning stage, you thought, okay, well, for the magic sounds, we want bells and stuff like that. And maybe you picked out a certain plugin that you want to use for all of the bell sounds. Okay, well, in this creative stage, now it's like, okay, I have my bell sounds, I have maybe the plugins, and so you have kind of a context to create the sounds. But here is where you can just be creative with it and use the plugins how they weren't really meant to be used. Maybe use the bells the way they weren't meant to be sounding, and play around with that and just experiment. Basically create a whole bunch of sounds, even if 90% of it is garbage, which most of the time it will be. That's how it is for this creative design process. You're just generating sounds and creating sounds and coming up with a big, wide palette of sounds that you can have inside of a folder that later you can draw from whenever you are starting to generate and layer your sounds together. So this is the creative phase of the design phase. After that, there's I put a technical side of the design phase. This is more like when you actually start building your sounds together. So the creative phase, you're creating building blocks for the sounds, and then in the actual assembly phase, this is when you're assembling your blocks together and creating sounds. So let's say you have your magic sounds. Well, perhaps you have your bell sounds. That's great, but then you also want to have some whooshes and other things like that. So in the assembly phase, this is where you put everything together, layer stuff together, and mix it and finalize the sounds together. All right. So with that phase done, then we would move on to step number 3, which is the implementation and testing phase. So here, this is where you would actually put it into the game engine or Wise or Fmod or whatever you're using through the game. Or if you're doing something like movies, maybe you could put it into the movie if you haven't done that yet. Put it into the context. See what it looks like and what it sounds like in the context, in the environment. How does it sound like against other sounds? This is where you're doing this kind of work. You're testing it against other sounds within the environment, within other character sounds, UI sounds, other game sounds, so that you can have an idea of what it sounds like. Are there certain frequencies maybe that are too present that need to be toned down? Is it too long of a sound? Maybe is it too short of a sound? So this is where you kind of go in and you see what it sounds like and how it feels within the actual context of the project. And once you have that done, then you can go back into this cycle. So you can go back into the R&D phase where you're thinking and planning, okay, like this part did work, this part didn't work. And then this is where you start over. So you can plan again, like, okay, well, if this didn't work, maybe the bell sounds didn't really work the way we wanted to. Maybe we need all digitalized bells or whatever. Okay, and then you go back to the cycle, and then you go back to the design phase, create, assemble, and then into the implementation and testing phase. So those are the three kind of steps that I think about whenever I'm designing sound effects. So hopefully that gives you a system of how to put it together. But I'd be curious, is there a system that you use? Is there a way that you like to think about, or a process that you go through whenever you're designing sound effects? So this it came about because I was talking to a friend about it recently, but I hadn't really been thinking about it. But is there something that you do or that you follow? Is there something that I missed? I'd love to know. So let me know in the comments below. And just a reminder to grab that sound pack, my Sound Designers Starter Pack. Link, again, will be in the description below, and it's absolutely free. So yeah, I think that's it for now for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.